Hey, welcome back to Daughters of the King. I'm Kathryn Gore. Thank you so much for joining us for part 2 on faith to be forgiven. Now, last week we spoke about how when we don't have faith to forgive ourselves, we actually enter into self-hatred. And tonight we're going to talk about two major signs that actually allow for us to understand that we are carrying self-hatred. But before I get into tonight's message, I want to pick up on the story of Adel from the Hearts of Fire book. Just to give you some background of what took place in Adel's village. Some months before that, there was Muslim families that came in that area, and they came in the name of love and peace. They actually put their flags up in that area and presented themselves as peaceful people. They were saying, hey, we're Muslims. I know that you're Christians. Us Muslims and Christians, we don't need to fight. We are here as neighbors. We can support each other. We can be cordial. You know, we don't have to be against each other. So the people in Adel's village was like, okay, we didn't have a problem before with anybody, so they didn't really think too much about it. So what happened about 4 months later, there started to be rumors that there was going to be an event take place, and the Christians, it was going to be a dark day for the Christians. And because Adel and her husband and some of the people in the village did not see any signs that the Muslims was going to hurt them, they kind of blew it off as a rumor. They didn't really take it too seriously. But it wasn't until maybe a few months after that, or a few weeks after that, there was a gentleman, a Christian gentleman, that was trying to travel outside of the village, and he came upon some Muslim soldiers or some Muslim men, and he was trying to leave and they would not let him go. And he was trying to explain that he needed to leave the area to go outside to get some supplies. And the Muslim men, it was about 30 of them or so, they got aggravated and frustrated that he was a Christian. So when he noticed that, he turned back around. And certain people in the village knew that he was leaving, so they were kind of surprised that he came right back so soon. And when he came back, he told the people what happened. So shortly after that comes to this day where Adel is in this vision right now, where she is in this moment that she has to run, because what happened was it was about 3,000 Muslim men that was coming into the village before Adel's village, and they burnt down the Christian village in that area. She saw smoke, she heard the voices like I was saying last week, she heard the shouts and the screams, and now we're up to speed of where Adel is at. So when she comes out of this vision about the happier days, she looks around and she doesn't see her children, and somebody told her that her children had already took off. They ran up the hill into the jungle. So Adel is like, oh, okay. So she tries to get some things together, and she looks and she sees her Bible, and she ends up meeting up with her husband, and her husband actually took their mothers out into the jungle, and they all met up with their children, and they're trying to escape, and it's raining, and they're trying to crawl on their hands and knees through the jungle and hide. So they come up on this empty barn after a few hours, because now it's so hard for them to keep traveling on their hands and knees in this jungle. And the family was able to catch their second wind, but Adel was broken because her children were hungry. Her son was like, Mom, I'm hungry. And she knew they didn't have any food. She knew what they just experienced. And she was just broken. She has a mother's heart. So her husband had compassion on her and said, don't cry. I'm going to go back to the village and see what I can find. Adel was like, don't go, because I don't know what's going to take place, and I don't know if you're going to find anything. I don't know what's back there. And he left anyway. So she was, a little on the edge, where she just ended up taking her children and the mothers, and they left that area and walked through the jungle in a deeper way. And then there they found more people, more Christian people that were hiding in the jungle. So fortunately, her husband found them in this area, and he met up with them, and all he could find was like 12 or 20 cans of Coca-Cola. He couldn't find anything, but the kids and the people out in that area, they had dry corn that they were, kind of standing in. They were standing in a field. So they started to eat the dry corn, so to speak. But then all of a sudden, they heard gunshots shooting through this corn. So everybody dropped. Everybody dropped. They didn't know what direction the gunshots was coming from. And her daughter, Adel's daughter, Christina, kind of picked her head up and looked at her mom in the eyes and said, "Mom, are we going to die?" And Adel's thought was, "Yes, we are." But she didn't say that. She ended up pulling her 2 children close to her, and she said, "Listen to me very carefully." She said, "We are under fire from the jihad, from the Muslims." And she said, "They're going to ask you if you're a Christian, and you're going to have to say the right thing." And the kids looked at her and said, "Mom, it's going to be okay. We're not afraid to say that we stand for Jesus. We're not afraid to die. We'll pick this up more as we go forth, because it's so much to Adel's story. This is just the beginning." Let's go forth in tonight's teaching. And once again, this is going to be about signs of self-hatred. Now, one of the biggest signs of self-hatred is self-judgment. And self-judgment is a common and powerful form of self-rejection. So these are the 2 things that we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about self-rejection, and we're going to talk about self-judgment. So what is self-judgment? Self-judgment is results from thoughts individuals have about themselves and the meanings attached to those thoughts. Now, the thoughts hence produce related feelings such as anxiety, anger, and depression. Judgments also consider the process of forming an opinion or reaching a conclusion based on the available material, but judgments people make about themselves can be habituated as they are used to explain and validate unhelpful thoughts. For example, if I am harsh on myself, other people will not be as harsh. You become to be so critical of yourself to block what a person can say about you. So it's a form or a tool or a mechanism of protection, so to speak, to protect you against people who can reject you, people who can come against you and say anything that is negative about you. You already have a mechanism, so to speak, where you put your own self down first. This was my biggest issue. My biggest issue, and I did not realize that I was entering into self-hatred. A lot of us don't even understand what takes place when we enter into self-hatred, because we are unaware that we have entered into self-hatred. For me, I used to write my pastor emails, I used to write my friends from church emails, my husband an email, whatever the case may be, and I would put myself down first. And then I would try to say, I'm working on it. I'm a little messed up, but I'm working on it. And one day my husband said, "Why do you keep doing that?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, "Doing what? What are you talking about?" He said, "Why do you have to put yourself down? If people are not talking about you, you're giving them something to talk about." And I was like, I don't know. I didn't realize I was doing that in that way. Because in my mind, the way that you process when you are so critical about yourself, You're thinking that everybody can see your flaws. You're thinking it's huge, where everybody can see what you feel. And sometimes that's not true. They see it, but they don't see it as a magnification of what you're holding on the inside. So, if you meet a stranger and you just come out and you introduce yourself and you say something negative about yourself, they didn't know you. They didn't know anything about you, but now they do. Now they do. And they have a reason to walk off and wonder, what's wrong with her? Why did she just say that about herself? If you pay attention to what you say to other people, or if you pay attention to how people speak back to you, you can pick up when people are judging themselves all the time. And that was me. And my husband, after a few years, he finally came out and said, stop. Why are you doing that? And I was like, why you didn't tell me that before? Because now it makes sense. But, you know, there's a time and there's a season. And I really believe it was something that God used him at the moment to say enough is enough. Start thinking about things in a different way. And that one-liner, if they didn't know, if they didn't have anything to say about you, they do now. Because you're always putting yourself down. That is something to think about, ladies. It really is. What is self-rejection? Because self-rejection and self-judgment and self-hatred, they're all tied together. Self-rejection is the feeling of not being wanted as imperfect or unwanted. Self-rejection carries low self-esteem. Remember last week I raised my hand and I said I had low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is when you think of yourself to be so little in the eyes of others or within yourself, and you don't feel confident, you don't feel secure, you don't feel loved, you don't feel appreciated, you feel rejected. Where do we feel insecure the most as women? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Isn't it our appearance? How we look? You know, how we present ourselves, how we speak. We need to gain our confidence back. This is the truth. We need to gain our confidence back, and we need to gain back our security. How do we do this? We take it one day at a time. One day at a time. We learn how to love ourselves. We learn how to forgive ourselves in the areas that we may know that we could have done better, especially after you find out that you put yourself down so much. Now you enter into shame and guilt even more. You're embarrassed because now you realize, oh my gosh, a lot of people didn't maybe see, but I didn't put myself out there. And it's just like, oh, people think I'm weird. People think I'm strange and indifferent. And then you have to get through all those thoughts. And it's just a constant roller coaster in your mind. And your confidence shoots down even lower. So just stop. Stop thinking. Just quit it. Take a deep breath and just exhale. Know that God loves you, and know that the people around you love you. Everybody has flaws. It's not our job to magnify our flaws to everybody, because the truth is, it is unattractive. It is something that we kind of push people away. Nobody wants to hear the negative all the time, right? Nobody wants to hear that. So everybody understands that they have flaws. Everybody understands that they have to work on some things. And when we make a mistake, it's okay for us to admit it and keep rolling. Keep on. Just keep going. Learn from that mistake and keep moving on. We need to give ourselves the chance that God wants to give us, and He wants to give us life. He doesn't want to give us death, and death is somewhat tied to self-hatred, self-judgment, criticism. I know a couple times I told you guys I am my biggest critic. That shouldn't be. You know, it's a difference between you judging yourself, because you have to check yourself, and you have to be real with yourself, And you have to make sure that you're on the up and up, that you're not doing something that you shouldn't do. But at the same time, there's a line that you should not cross. When you enter into self-hatred, when you enter into criticalness, self-judging, and all of that stuff, you cross the line and you need to get back over so you can breathe, you can live healthy, and go forth and do the things that God calls you to do. Now, another reason why we hate ourselves, we feel rejected by others. This is a big thing. This hurts. There's no way of getting around this. It hurts. Especially if you are a sweet person that would do anything for anybody. It hurts to see that other people would not do the same for you, that they would reject you, they wouldn't help you, that they would just push you to the side as if you wasn't worth anything. This happens so much to our younger girls today. This happens so much to them where they do end up acting out because they want to be seen. They want to know that somebody cares. They want to know that they're loved, that people can acknowledge that they are in a room. And if they're not taught that they need to love themselves first, no matter who places them on the shelf, who puts them to the side, they're going to fall for the traps and they're going to fall for anything that comes their way. So we have to learn that we can't really hold rejection so close to our hearts. Now, I would suggest for us not to live for other people. Let's live for God. Let's live for ourselves in a godly way. When we live for God or in a godly way, God will cause us to have peace, understanding, and wisdom. Will it hurt? Yes. Yes, it will hurt. Would you stay hurt? You don't have to, because you would have the love of God covering you. And you won't feel that deep rejection that the enemy wants you to live in. You'll know it's not you, and that other people are hurting, and hurt people hurt others. This is so real. Didn't really understand it when I was young. As a full-grown adult, I can understand that concept. Hurt people hurt others, and it is so real. So when you have wisdom and knowledge and understanding that it may not even be you. It could be that someone else is acting out in their hurt and pain. And that will give you a reason not to take it in so deep. Take this rejection in so deep, because you can have enough confidence to know, I didn't even do anything. So it must be something that's going on with them, and you don't have to take it personal. Some people don't have a clue on how to live. They may not have manners or a moral lifestyle, and they don't mean no harm. They honestly just don't know. And this is the person that could try to bring rejection to you. So don't carry this rejection from others so heavy in your spirit. Give it to God and let God love you and fill you with His peace that passes all understanding. And guess what? You can be free. You can be free to live, to smile, to have a good day within yourself. You don't have to wait for someone to come and brighten up your day. You can do this yourself. Sing a song, smile, receive the joy of the Lord, and walk on. This is so serious, ladies, because, you know, as a young child, if you experience rejection all the way up through you being a grown adult, that rejection is deeply rooted, and you develop mindsets and habits and certain things that are just not healthy for you. But when you break free from self-hatred, when you break free from those mindsets that brings self-judgment and self-rejection, you can be free to live the way that God wants you to live. You can be free. Other people's voices about you is not going to bother you. as much. You're not made of steel, so I can't tell you that it's not going to hurt, because it is going to hurt. But you will have wisdom, you will have understanding to know, hey, that's on them, because I am who I am. This is how God made me, and I'm going to be happy and satisfied with how God created me. I hope you got something out of this message. I hope that you're able to process this. Self-rejection, self-judgment, and self-hatred is not good for us. It develops low self-esteem. It develops a lack of confidence, and it brings unworthiness to us. And we just need to let it go. Let our past go. Let the things that happen to us completely go. Let God heal us, and let Him take us forth along this journey. We can do it, because we're worth something. The Father said so. We're like pearls, right? We're precious. Be blessed. This is real. Be blessed, because we are precious. We are precious to God. Get that in your spirit. I will see you next week as we go forth on Daughters of the King. Thank you for coming by. Bye-bye.